Okay, this is Stephanie Fannin, and I'm here with Sarah Hinkelman, and we're interviewing William McKinley at his home in Lucasville on March 15th, 2019 at around 9:20.
Right there.
We're here to discuss William's experiences as a member of Lucasville community. As a reminder, this interview is in complete control of the interviewee and may stop at any time. If I ask any questions that you prefer not to answer, just let me know and I'll move on to another question. You'll have the opportunity to review your interview before it is deposited into the archive, and you can make edits to it at that time. This interview will be deposited at 5 locations at which people will be able to access the full contents of the Ohio Field School collection, including this interview and any photographs we take during our time with you. So the 5 deposits will be the Folklore Archives at Ohio State University, 14th Street Community Center with Drew Carter, Shawnee State Park with Jenny Richards, Shawnee State University with Drew Feight's Digital Oral History Lab, and Portsmouth Public Library with Carolyn Cottrell in the Historical and Genealogy Room. The Ohio Field School collection will also be included on the digital commons at Shawnee site housed at Shawnee State University, which will be fully available to the general public through an open access online platform. Does that work for you? Perfect. Okay. So basically, just to start, I just want to get to know you more. Basically, how long have you lived in Lucasville? Are you a Lucasville native? Lifetime. How about your family? How long have they been here?
Mostly lifetime.
Since it began.
My mom came from Kentucky when she was 6 years old.
Oh wow.
But basically lifetime.
Okay. So what kind of draws you to the area? I know you went to Ohio State. What kind of drew you back to Lucasville and made you want to stay?
Well, actually, I got into my mom had our first cousin lived with us.
Okay.
And she knew, she was a professional shopper. And so she knew these retail people, and they had a nephew that needed a partner in the business world.
Okay.
And so I wanted a career in retail.
Mm-hmm.
I was never going to be in the funeral business. I was anti-funeral business. And so I came. In the meantime, I took the placement test for Sears, and they said I was go to Chicago for the training in September. I graduated, and so in the meantime, in the interim, I needed to work, and so I went down there and met them. I knew who they were, but I did not know them intimately, let's say, business-wise. And so I just took it on a lark, retail, and I was there 18 years.
Wow. So it's mostly job prospects then that kind of drew you back?
Yeah. Well, I was in kind of a lame duck session, so I was usually pretty active. And my parents were Depression parents, and they taught me to work.
Yeah. And
so I was not used to downtime, and I really was not too much of a playboy, and and work ethic was very in my DNA, kind of. And I like public relations, because this is a public relations business. But it was a different venue. So I became a buyer. And in the city of Portsmouth, we had a retail store. So I was in an airplane a lot, traveling the markets. And so then my dad got cancer of the pancreas. And he died, and my mom was a nurse. But they founded this business in 1937. So, and it was like my mom's roots, So my dad begged me I was the only child, and he was very critical, and he he wanted me to come back out here and extend the business, basically. In the meantime, my business partner's wife got cancer of the gallbladder, and we had built the Holiday Inn in Portsmouth, or it was the Ramada Inn. Our families became such good friends through Bruce Cantor and me. We became such good friends that they always wanted to build a motel on the river, and so they always wanted to build this motel on the river, and so Bruce's dad always thought he was George Burns, and he smoked a cigar and he could crack jokes. He should have been a monologuer or something, late night TV. He was hilarious, and he was a twin, and his twin was a driving, successful businessman. And Jaime, he was successful, but he lollygagged along. He wasn't near the financial success as his twin. So he applied for this loan, and it was kind of a joke. And he always had this dream he wanted to build this motel on the river. And in 1968, the last loan that came through economic development, he got it. And it became, what do we do with it? Build this motel, So my family was in the building business. Had a retail lumber up here. And the families had already become good friends. So the loan was there, so we became the stockholders and furnished the materials, and the Ramada Inn became history. And then now it's evolved into the Holiday Inn, but Ramada Inn, we had a lot of, I came back out here. My dad wanted me to come back in the funeral business out here, and Mother was very enthused about it. So she retired from nursing, came back out here, and it was like a second wind to her. And then Bruce's family, his mother was living, his dad was living, his dad got Alzheimer's. He was the manager of the motel, he got Alzheimer's. His mother got COPD. We had to sell her house, move her. She moved to the top of the motel, and the maids helped take care of her, assisted her, the janitors or whatever. And we just got into all kinds of, he was an only child and I was an only child, but he had 3 children. And it was very demanding. So I left him and came back out here, which really overloaded on him. So, and that was in 74.
So what happened to the motel then?
We sold it.
You sold it?
We had a business neighbor that this fellow always, when he grew up, it was a restaurant, and so I'd go over there for lunch, and it was like a big retail, we were all like a big family downtown, 5th and Chillicothe. Portsmouth had a real business community. We had 3 banks, 2 great restaurants. Mm-hmm. You had to stand in line to get in. So Portsmouth we had Montgomery Wards, we had Penny's, we had Woolworths. I think we had Woolworths. We had 3 men's specialty stores. We had 3 women's specialty stores. We had a Marting's, the department store, and Kresge's. We had Kresge's. Portsmouth was a booming town, and it all just crashed with the industrial decline. We lost our shoe factories, our steel mill, everything with the tank. So it's become more of an educational. The university came into bloom, fortunately, and became a 4-year university in 1986. So then I went on the development board in 1987. And so I went to my first meeting, and it was all these CEOs. And I didn't say anything. I was intimidated, somewhat intimidated. And so at the end of the board meeting, they talked about a capital campaign. They was wanting to raise $6 million right away. for 8 million, and finally I think came to landed on 6 million. And one of the CEOs sitting beside me said, William, said, you've been so quiet, said, what do you think about all this? And I said, well, I think we need a mascot. And four of the men, four or five of them pledged $100,000. And I was hyperventilating. I was really intimidated. All these people were like 15 to 20 years older than me. And so I thought, Lord have mercy, what am I into, with all these. And so I said, I think we need a mascot. I said, we'll get the identification with we'll market the university and the children will like it and eventually become, and I used like Brutus Buckeye. I said, look, Brutus Buckeye, look what he's done for Ohio State. We need a mascot. Mm-hmm. And so this one CEO says, well, I don't care about a mascot. He said, all I look for is so when we have a performing arts center, I can come down, spend an evening and watch King Lear. So you talk about a major put down.
Yeah.
So I went to, the development director was my age. And so I told Susan, and it was a woman, and so I told Susan, her husband, we'd all been retail friends. Her husband, they had a furniture company, mom and pop furniture company down there. And so I told Susan, I said, we talked it over, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to see if we could get anybody to make a bear. And so I called the manager of the 4th floor Lazarus, which was Lazarus. I don't know, did you ever hear about Lazarus? Okay. So it was a booming thing. I mean, it's federated. So, and his name was Mark Goldstein. And I said, Mark, do you know anybody in the city of Columbus that could make us a bear? He said, I sure do. And I said, well, who is he? He said, it's my wife. I said, you're kidding me. I thought he was putting me on. And he said, I didn't know his wife. I just knew him through the retail thing. And he said, well, her name's Wendy. He gave me they lived in Bexley, and he gave me their number. And so I called her. Her name was Wendy Goldstein. And so I went up there to visit him, and everything was cut. I mean, she laid it all out, and she was very, very positive she could make this bear. So I made a 3 trips up privately. And remember, this was all clandestine. It was behind the scenes, except with Susan, the development director. So finally, she went up with me, maybe the 3rd or 4th trip. And she was impressed. And she said, well, I think we got this show on the road. So about the 5th trip, she called me. She says, we're going to have a visitor at the Goldsteins today. And I said, well, who is it? She said, well, it was Verna K. Rife. And her dad was the Speaker of the House. And she was on the Board of Trustees. And I knew Verna K. And so he had sent her over there to see what was going on. So it all ended up amicable and very, very positive. So Shawnee became the Shawnee Bears, and the Wendy Goldstein, she made the first bear. Wow. And the story of the bear, one of our presidents had that made. And so that's the story of it right there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so they're the Shawnee State University Bears.
I bet
but we didn't know where the project could be thrown overboard, because the powers that be was on this board. They didn't seem to care. They seemed to care less, but it took hold. Well, obviously it took hold. So we started promoting the bear at events, and it became so popular. Like if we had a big social or a big fundraiser or something, we always brought the bear for Shawnee State. We promoted the university that way. Wow. Then I evolved on the Board of Trustees. Governor George Voinovich had wanted me to be on the Board of Trustees before, and but that time I was back out here, and my mom had died, and I was kind of alone.
Mm.
And we were so busy. I was at for 7 years, and then finally he came back, and he was going out, and he had one more appointment. And at the end of his tenure, I had a close friend that was a very close friend of theirs, and so he came by here, and I told him I'd do it. And it was an interesting experience, but the bear was born, you know. It was born in 87, I think. It would be 87.
So where did the funeral service, where did that kind of emerge in this timeline?
1937.
1937?
My dad was taught a one-room school, and my mother was a nurse, and they were out of the Depression. And my mother passed state board in 1930, and my dad, he graduated from OU, I think it was 35. And so they got married in 37, and my dad always grew up in this village, and we had 2 funeral homes then, and he loved one. He always wanted to take a crack at it. So they saved their money and invested it and started in 37.
Wow. Did it become kind of the central one since there were already
Well,
two?
no, we had a competition, and they kind of wore the other. Fortunately, they wore the others out. You know, basically, it took them about. See, my dad taught school up to about 44. Mother retired. She quit nursing then, and she stayed here, but when World War II came on, and they needed men teachers because all the men went to the war, and so they made a provision for him because of this business. So they would let him off to do funerals, but we didn't have the business. We had them. It was just the building blocks. And it took about 5 years to get established. And then after he retired, maybe in 44, somewhere along in there, it kind of started, they were growing. Every year it grew, but it would be small, but you know, they could see the daylight at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So we were in our 82nd year.
Wow. It's been a long time. So did you have to go back to school then? When you?
Well, I had to serve, well, at that time, my college degree went a long way.
Okay, because you did business, right?
Yeah, I was in business administration. And what I had to do was serve 2 years apprenticeship, which was here. See, we had, all of our employees have died, you know, basically. And so I served my apprenticeship under an old-time employee here. And then my mom was the last one to go, but she went in 87.
Was there anything that, like, were you ever deterred with your apprenticeship from kind of doing it? Like, were there any hesitations going into funeral service? Or
No, I was focused.
focused?
Yeah. Well, my mom enjoyed it so much, and they had struggled to get started, and it kind of gave me a new thrust, I guess.
That makes sense.
So I was determined to make a go.
To make it go. You're still.
But we had a boom in retail business in
Yeah.
Portsmouth.
Um,
And then we had the motel too. We were really busy.
yeah.
So, and my partner, he's got Alzheimer's. He lost his wife. She didn't recover from he's in a second marriage, but she didn't recover from cancer of the gallbladder is very rare, and there's very little research done on it. It was a rare thing, and left him with the children. They were teenagers and things, and one was in Miami. His children went to Miami. So we've been friends all these years, and our family been through this building. The unique thing was we became good friends. And then when you get finances involved and a business deal as big as what we had, several $1 million, and we're all still good friends. Everybody There was never any dissension between our families, and we've been all through the history. What's left of us, we've still been good friends, which was kind of unique.
What was your favorite business endeavor out of the ones, like with the motel and the funeral home?
Well, I enjoyed them all.
Oh.
I think maybe the least favorite in one way, the funeral business was so traumatic for me because, see, it's so local. My clients are like my family, basically. And that was the negative. But I realized we were doing a service for them. And so probably this was it was a dichotomy. It was my favorite and my least favorite. It was kind of schizophrenic, you know, basically. I was bipolar on it. In the motel was interesting, but in the retail of it being a buyer and traveling the markets, I always enjoyed that because it was a lighter situation. It was important to our clients. You know, the outer creates a lot, affects the inner, and the clothing was important, but and I enjoyed it was frivolous compared to this, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the vanity. It was just nice to see the vanity side of life, the superficial maybe.
Where did you travel to?
Well, I did all the domestic markets.
Domestics?
New York, Dallas. I went mostly to Los Angeles. We ended up West Coast. And we had to sign up brokers, and I stumbled into, by the grace of God, stumbled into this mom and pop brokers, and they had been there since they went to the West Coast in 1929, and they were from Nebraska, and they went west to discover their fortune, and they'd been out there all those years, and this was in the 60s now. And so they ended up, I walked in and I thought that we were too small for them because they had all the power accounts. And here I was, the flunky again, you know, the little guy from Ohio. And the most unique thing was, I kept telling Bruce, I said, they kept producing very lucrative situations with us, and we carried all the power lines. You know, the popular, at one time, I don't know where you remember this, but we were like the country look, the Villager, the Ladybugs. That was in the era of the 60s and 70s, coming off of till the Vietnam War really became so fractious, you know, and became so controversial. But we had all that traditional look, and then we had the baby boomers coming on, and we really racked them up. So we would sold and we're a small market. At one time we sold 1,200 swimsuits. We really racked them up.
Yeah.
We had Calvin Klein jeans. We had all the established, and that was a lot through the brokers. And because we were a success, all the salesmen wanted to come in, and we became a pilot. And this will be relevant to you, and I didn't realize it at the time, but when we were in Los Angeles with the brokers, I kept thinking that they were going to let us go, and they didn't have time to fool with us. Well, the bottom line was there was a big war going on between New York markets and the West Coast markets. In the West, the New York markets had promoted, like for women, the mid-calf skirts, and it bombed. There was a big blight. New Yorkers were very supercilious. I mean, we're right, you're wrong type, you know. They're very aggressive. Mm-hmm. The West Coast came up with pantsuits and jeans. so you know the rest of the story.
Yeah.
So we carried all the designer jeans, and we had all the new innovation of ideas, and the Bergmans guided me a little bit that way. And then I had opinions, very strong opinions about our markets. And so we had a big regional business, but we were a little pricey because we introduced lines. We were on the upscale. We were the upscale store. We were the investment buyers. But I was going to tell you the one unique thing we learned is that in this fracas between East Coast and West Coast or whatever and Dallas, we were much more aligned with Texas and California than we were in New York. And so the brokers, Mr. and Miss Bergman, and she was actually a first cousin of Greer Garson, who was Buddy Folkelson married Greer Garson, and they were wired, and like President Nixon took care of his cars. I mean, they were wired. His best friend was a fellow named Dave Chasen, which Johnny Carson was the night show, and so his best friend was Dave Chasen, and that was Johnny Carson's very close friend. He would talk about Chasen's of Beverly Hills. It was a fantastic restaurant. And I would just give you a little thing about, they were so, and then we were there when the Manson murders took place. And see, they lived at the Bel Air Gates on Sunset. See, Sunset runs and the Bel Air Gates go up in the hills. So Greer Garson and Buddy Fogelson, who was Mrs. Bergman's cousins, they sold that house, their home on Sunset, and they went up to the top of the Bel Air, and they were some of the first people in there, way I understood. And so as they went up on the hills, then the Bergmans, they had a motion picture theater in their home. I mean, it was an estate.
Yeah. And
so then the Manson murders came along, and it was an attack on the rich. And you talk about in the vanity of vanities, in the markets, everybody took their jewelry off, and that brought on the jeans and the downsizing of everything. Everybody, and then the hippies were big time. Then, so they kind of trended toward the hippie look, but it would be like a Calvin Klein or something like that, So, but it all kind of came together because they were scared to death, and Mr. and Miss Bergman, they would not even ride in the same car. They had separate chauffeurs. And they hired the Bel Air Patrol, and they would patrol their estate before they would call the patrol, and they would patrol their estate. That was the fear that the rich that the Mansons had on the rich. It scared them to death. And one of the Dave Bergman, Miss Bergman's employees lived in Silver Lake, and there was a supermarket, the LeBiancas. If you study the Mansons, they were just these Mansons just picked their house and went there and bludgeoned them, and it was a block within Dorothy Lee, her residence. And that also doubled the paranoia of the Bergman buyer, because Dorothy they could have picked her place, but they went up. She knew who the Biancas were, casually, but she knew it was too close, and they wrote pigs in blood on the wall and everything. It was awful. And one of the first up in the Bel Air Estates, they killed this Folger, Abigail Folger, who was the heir to the Folger fortune. But the bottom line is they were newer up in the Bel Air Estates, and Mr. and Miss Bergman said that they had not hired the Bel Air Patrol, which most everybody had. They had moved in there new, and they had not had the Bel Air Patrol on a contract. And if they would have done that right away, they might have prevented the Malaise or
Yeah.
whatever, the murders. It was a big story. And I was out there and all that, all the fear, and it really redirected retail.
Yeah.
And it's never recovered. Everything became so casual, and people took their rings off and put them in the lock boxes. Everything, the whole market just dressed down right now. It was just like a metastasis. It was contagious, and everybody was talking about, what they were doing for security in the markets. But I was going to tell you the bottom line, which would be relevant to you, is in the political polling, what they say, as Ohio goes, has voted with the winners all but one time. And it was in the 60s that they went with Nixon instead of Kennedy, but all the rest of the time, they use it as a bellwether. And so what the Bergmans, to show you their sharpness, I was the Ohio person, and I was in a small town, and so they were using me, and I didn't even know it. I was so ignorant, basically, and they ultimately I caught on, and they took me out like they would send buyers out with me, take me up Beverly Hills. And just all these little boutiques came up, and where the hippies were everywhere, and there was like dress lines. They'd have tags. Mother doesn't like them, that'd be the name of the line. It was crazy, and they would have me on Rodeo Drive, and it was just amazing. It was the other world, how it was. But they were using Ohio, they were using me as a bellwether from a mom and pop Appalachia, Ohio, which is related to what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's how sharp they were. And they had all the big names, Bullocks, and Mr. Bergman's good friend was Stanley Marcus, and they have Neiman Marcus in Dallas. So there was a lot of communication going on from the Neiman Marcus stores to their brokers. They were feeding them information all the time because Texas was another entity. So there were a lot of communication going on between Stanley Marcus and Mr. Bergman. They were wired. They knew everything that creeped and crawled, if it was worth knowing. Basically, they were fascinating.
Did kind of all that travel and seeing, kind of like you said, like the vanity of it all, did that change your perspective on Portsmouth at all?
No, it just gave me wisdom.
Wisdom?
How to deal with men and women and everything. It was like a PhD in marketing, and Bruce had the children, and ultimately he didn't like to travel, so they pushed me out. Basically. And so I was the person that did most of the marketing. And we had salesmen come to the stores all the time, and he would learn there, but if we go to the markets, I would go to the markets, basically.
So you had a good setup. Each of you were kind of had your own spheres. Have you... So, obviously you...
So I translated that into our market here.
Yeah.
You remember, they were using us. The correlation was they were using us. And when I discovered that, what was going on, and I learned it through, Ronald Reagan was the governor there. Well, he was running for governor. And when I was out there, and they laughed him out, they laughed and laughed and laughed. He's an actor. And this Jerry Brown just retired as governor. His dad was Pat Brown, and he was the governor. And this Ronald Reagan, he came on and he won by 1 million votes. It was a huge upset. But California, you can never gauge. It's very, very fickle. It's a fickle market. And so, but anyway, he came on and which showed you the trend of that day was toward Ronald Reagan. That was and Ohio and the political side. I began to notice the political side. New York went for when he ran for president. New York went against him the first time, and Pennsylvania, but Ohio stuck with California and the West, which gave me an indication we were on the right. It was, there was something trendy that we were relating to the Reagans, basically.
Yeah.
And they were figuring all that. They were light years ahead of us in the marketing sense. So I took all that information and brought it in here and just kind of tweaked it a little bit.
So what'd you do?
Just learn. Scioto County is very wide. It's a poverty county, but it's a county, for example, our last capital campaign we had for Shawnee State. Now we're a poverty county. I mean, that's the perception. Mm-hmm. We raised $16 million private money.
Wow.
See, but it's like old money. But we have this real philanthropic. This county will raise more money. We had like Dancing with the Stars, our Red Cross. We raised for an evening event. For the Red Cross, our local chapter, we raised actually just short of $200,000 on one evening. And we have a museum. We raised a few million. We have a wonderful museum. We have the Performing Arts Center became, and we're bringing we have all the big things coming in here. Chicago will be here. The Broadway show, Chicago is our next event. I mean, this is a small venue, but people have a perception of one thing because we've had, and the opioid thing is very prevalent all over Ohio. But this Route 23 is an arterial way, and so many of the bust was here in Valley Township, but it's Route 23. It's like Dayton, Detroit, but we get the bum rap for, and that doesn't mean we don't have a lot of people on drugs. It's like everybody else. But they said Dayton, 60 Minutes had a special on Dayton, was the most affected city in the whole United States. And we have the problems too. I'm on the counseling board of directors. We just had a meeting last night, and we're fighting all this poverty and stuff. But at the same time, we have this other side. We've had a lot of renowned people come from here.
Yeah, I know they've mentioned you guys have a rich history of.
We do.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, but that's not the focus, it seems.
Well, the media.
Yeah.
It's more attractive to pick the dirt up.
The dirty laundry.
The dirty laundry.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like that. It's like that everywhere. The focus.
Oh, I know. The media, they concentrate on the dirty laundry.
Yep.
But we have this community we have a hospital, $100 million hospital.
Yeah, I've noticed that there seems to be like an uprising of like healthcare, like a very like.
Well, because
centric.
the county's older.
Yeah.
See, we lost a generation. So many people their children had to leave for professional jobs, just general labor jobs, because we lost the mill, we lost shoe factories, we lost everything. And so we became more of an educational shop because of Shawnee State and a medical. I don't know, did you just go over and see our hospital?
We've passed it a couple times, but yeah, it's crazy to me how many healthcare different like kind of facilities there are. They're just popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
It seems.
And then our schools.
Mhm.
Did you see our schools?
Yeah.
I mean, there are the taxpayers have voted for those.
Mhm.
And there's hardly our schools in this county are physically way ahead of most counties in the Appalachia. I mean, our schools are, our Lucasville school, we have a stadium like small college.
Mm-hmm.
We were one of the first people to put the turf in.
Wow.
So when you're down here, it's a split society. But Ohio is becoming a split society. Educationally, financially, socially, and as when poverty hits or when economic hard times hit, the society splits, and you forget all the progressive people that lived over here that makes this community go. Just like who would think we could raise $16 million private money for a university? And we've had like people in Columbus, like John Fisher was from here. He was president nationwide. He grew up in Portsmouth. The Moritz Law School, he grew up in Portsmouth. He gave the university $30 million for the law school. And he's a Portsmouth person.
Mm-hmm.
Plus we have our big names like Roy Rogers and all those people too. And Branch Rickey, who was president of Ohio Wesleyan. And then the Selby Stadium at Ohio Wesleyan, that was off of the Selby Shoe Company. There's still Selby's living down here, and they built the stadium for Ohio Wesleyan. And that was out of Portsmouth. There's been a lot of interesting things come out of here.
Yeah.
Athletes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw all those murals with.
Yeah, there you go. The murals. The murals, that's unique.
Yeah.
I'm a part of that.
Yeah.
So the murals, it's just amazing. And we have a baseball banquet. That's how one of the major reasons we support the murals is through our baseball. We have so many celebrities. We sell out all the time, and that's kind of one of the main financial sources for the murals. And we're always painting new ones. And that's all just out of this county, basically. And the museum, we raised the money for the museum. And our hospice center, we're just short of $3 million right now of our hospice expansion.
Yeah.
We have a hospice center to die for, and the staff is to die for. And that is part of the healthcare part, but it's the number one charity. Our hospice center is. And let me tell you this for Scioto County. I was on the foundation board, and I used to say we needed a hospice center, and it went over for 20 years. I was there. Another flunky went there in the early 80s. And we built the Life Center. We have a wonderful Life Center, and this is one of the annexes over here. Future health care. But we needed a hospice center. And so finally about 2000 or early 2000, they came out here and they said, we got big news for you. The hospitals decided to build a hospice center. So you're the first to know outside the administration. So they said that's the good news, but William, we got the bad news. And I said, well, what is it? They said, they'll only match dollar for dollar. So I said, well, how much would we have to raise? They said $2.5 million. It was a $5 million project. So we visited a while with the public relations thing. And I said, Sally, it was a lady, Sally, I said, if there's any way we could raise that money, I said we could raise for hospice. I said it is absolutely acute need. And our dire need is acute.
Yeah.
And it's going to get more so because our society is aging. So we formed a committee, and in 9 months we had $2.5 million.
Wow.
The administration was in a state of shock. So that's how the hospice center was built. So they have a dog, and they have and you remember kind of secondary to them for a lot of years. They bring the dog to the foundation meetings now. The dog wears out. You know, he over-identifies, and they have to trade dog They have to take this dog home and let him run on the weekends. He over-identifies. He's a lab. He over-identifies with the patients. So they take him home and let him run. And it's just, you know, amazing. So now they're overrun, and it's just fantastic what they do. The staff is amazing. And actually the girl that's over it is from Lucasville.
Okay.
And so we need this expansion, so we've been on this expansion, and it's a $3 million private money deal. And so we're 90, I think they told me 97% there. We're just a few thousand off. We've got most of it raised. And they're going to break ground in, this spring, and they're not sure, maybe April or early May. They want to be sure there's good weather when they break it. And then our Performing Arts Center.
Yeah.
I mean, where could you go in a county and have a Performing Arts Center like that and all this? Have you ever seen our brochures or anything?
Mm-mm.
You haven't? I should have one here. I mean, we have everything here. And what we can afford, we get so many inquiries we can't afford them. Like one time, the 3 tenors wanted to come here, but they wanted $100,000. Well, that's out of our leg. But we can go up to 50 or 60. We had Cats. You remember Cats on Broadway?
Cats,
it was here twice.
Wow.
They were here once, and they brought it back. 42nd Street. We've had a lot of the. I can't even remember we've had so many high flyers here. Basically, and but I should show you. You should see our brochures. I surely got one someplace. I promote it all the time. But see, these are the things that people don't realize is going on down here. Let's see, we had the Columbus Children's Choir and the Symphony Orchestra came down. They wanted to come down. We let them come down. This is one of our brochures. I don't know what year it was. That 2018.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it just seems like there's just this big.
It's a gap.
Yeah.
But the politicians know where to come.
Oh yeah, they know.
They always, you know what? Inside the Red Cross is like our parent chapter of Cincinnati, Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think the executives don't come down here?
Well, they probably love it down
Oh, they come. They do.
Yeah.
And so what they did, see, we support Pike, which is Waverly. We support Pike, Adams, Lawrence, Jackson. All basically comes out of here. And Brown County, which is down to toward Claremont County, towards Cincinnati.
Wow.
And it's fundamentally out of here, this god-awful place.
Where do you think all this philanthropy comes from? Do you think people just feel ties
it
to
was
the
a committed
community?
people committed to the community.
And is it mostly old wealth? Do you know?
Well, a lot of it's
a
been.
lot of it.
See, or a lot of it's accumulated from the glory days of the entrepreneurs, basically.
Do you have any concerns?
And there's a lot of conservatism here. You never know where the money is.
Yeah.
It's kind of you'd be shocked where the amounts of money that's laying around.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Well, a lot of people, they live here. For example, they live kind of a down style live, but maybe you couldn't believe the numbers of people take cruises out of here. And on the Buckeye cruise, we had about 3 or 4 people out of Lucasville went on the Buckeye cruise. It's just amazing. And we have a strong Ohio State base down here. And I mean, we have a strong feeling for the Buckeyes.
Mm-hmm.
And we in the 80s, WNXT was our radio station, and they were newer. They just came in '52, and they made it on the Reds, but they picked up on the Buckeyes a little later. So they had the Buckeyes up to about in the 80s when Earl Bruce was there, and the university told them that they'd have to carry the basketball and the football, and it was a package, and the Earl Bruce show and whatever, all the things. It was a package. So the WNXT was panicked. They thought they might have to give up the football, which was a great market for them. And so they called out here and was talking about it a little bit. And I told the person that called, I said, well, you know what? I said, for the first year, I said, I'll just take that for 1 year and we'll see what happens. So I signed on for the whole thing for what appeared to be 1 year. And so Glockner's, you might have passed the car lot down here, Glockner's on Route 23. Did you come up Route 23?
I don't think we came up that way.
You probably came up 104.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Glockner's is a huge car lot. They've consumed everything. You'd see it's a whole big complex down Route 23. So anyway, Abby Glockner, and they were very, very devout Catholics, very interested in Notre Dame schools, private schools, whatever. So Abby calls WXT and he says, if that boy likes that damn team that well, sign Glockner's on. So we had 2 sponsors that I didn't even get through the first year. Oh, they called out here and said, Abby Glockner's a pretty good friend of yours. And I thought he's much older than me. And so I thought, yeah, I said, I know Abby Glockner. And know his wife, and he has the girls and Andy. And so he said, well, he thinks you're his friend. He said, if that boy loves that damn team that well, his sign Glockner's on. So they've been on there ever since. It was in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. So his friend was over AAA, who is president of the Murals now. And he was over 13 counties in AAA. So he called Bob Morton, and Bob said, they talked to him. Bob said, well, we'll just sign AAA on to it, help William. So we had 3 sponsors the first year. So, but basically, you know, we've had this flagship station down here. When I was president of the Ohio State alumni in the 80s, I think it was in the 80s and late 70s, we'd always have an annual banquet. And we'd have 100, 150 people come. We had the Scarlet and Gray show, Gary Williams, the basketball coach, John Cooper. You know, we would always get the icons of Ohio State, and we could always get their attention, basically. And when they built the athletic center up there at Ohio State, I had a business partner. His name was Eddie Levi. He was our athletic committeeman. He was an old Ohio Stater. I was a younger Ohio Stater in those days. And so they called him on $10,000 out of Sauter County. So Eddie came up and said, you think we could raise $10,000? And he said, they're just going to be here an hour. I said, well, I didn't know. So we took him down to the motel. We owned the motel then. Took them down to the motel, and we invited these people. We had a pretty good turnout. And before they left, we had the $10,000. Wow. They couldn't believe it. We had 10,000, just walked right out of there, 10,000. This is a very unique thing, too. The fellow who's gone now, he was there. I invited him because his parents were split. His mother lived in Columbus, and she was Woody Hayes' wife's traveling companion on the road games. And they were friends with Ann Hayes. But her husband, they had an ice business, and the boy lived down here. So I invited him and his wife, they were naturals to come down here because of the history of to Woody Hayes. And Doug had gotten so fat, he told me, he says, William, he says, I would give them $125,000 if they would let me have 2 seats. He said, I've gotten to the place I'm so uncomfortable at the stadium. And I thought, man, oh man, we've hit the jackpot. And they turned him down. You reckon they wouldn't today? They turned him down. They wouldn't even consider it. I thought we hit the jackpot. That's just a little nuance, the interesting things that happens along the way. Mm-hmm. But we've had a big Ohio State support, and we still do. People come in, and you know what? Another thing is, the lost generation for Scioto County is so many people migrated to Columbus, and when we make funeral arrangements, I mean, they just come down here. I have a Brutus out here in the front. Most of the time, the windstorm, we have to deflate it, and it's deflated today. But all the children, they just love the Brutus thing, basically. And they let me have the Hummer.
They let you have it?
There were only 3.
Oh, wow.
It was a signature car from the Hummer store. And I think they said the Reicherts got one. And there was a older fellow, State Farm, I forgot his name, and I think he lived out toward Licking County or Fairfield County, somewhere out that way. He got the other one, I think, and then I got the third one. And we had, like for example, this is Ohio. I'm telling you things that are related to Ohio State for here. This is a great story for Ohio State. Is if you look up on the wall, you'll see a wood up on where the water cooler is. Mm-hmm. You see a wood plaque, like an oak.
Yeah.
Okay. The Tabittle came out with a program that you could buy an instrument in somebody's honor. Well, see, my mom, when my uncle graduated, he was like my uncle, but he was my first cousin. A sister raised a sister, basically, and she had my mom, and she had her biological son, and he had one child, and mother had one child, and we're just cousins, but we were just like brothers and sisters. So I got picked up on that Tabittle thing, and I thought, well, and I had a godfather who's in the funeral business, and he loved to play E-flat trumpet. And my dad's sister was a band director for years in Nelsonville, York. So I had a market, So I first bought Jerry E-flat trumpet. That's what he had. He saved his trumpet from Portsmouth High School. He went to Portsmouth High School, and he was in funeral business. And so I bought him an E-flat trumpet, and I bought Mother. I have to look up there, but anyway, it's been so many years. So I bought a trumpet for her, I think. And so I wrapped them up and just gave them for Christmas gifts. And they just flipped out. In fact, Jerry shed tears over it, and he put it up in his office. That was divine. It was sacred ground. People love the band. If they love the band, they love the band. So anyway, I did that several times for people. I thought, this is a great idea. So I just buy an instrument, and so I don't know, maybe 5 times or something. And I kind of forgot, but one day I got a call from somebody representing the marching band. And they said that Dr. Woods wanted to have lunch with me. I said, oh, give me a break. I slammed up the phone. They called the second time, and I don't know who it was that started that stuff. I just cut them off. So the third time they called, was from the school music. Her name was Cristina. I can't remember the last name. And she said, don't hang up. She said, don't hang up. Said, this is a bona fide call. Said, I'm calling for Dr. Woods, and he would like to have lunch with you. So I listened. I said, well, I said, I'm so busy. I said, it's irrelevant. I don't know if it's done. So he said he would like to have lunch with you. So I thought about it, and so I said, we got a date. And I said, well, okay. I wasn't as busy. My mind was clear then. I said, okay. So it was like on a Thursday, and they wanted to meet me. There was a restaurant, Rigsby's in the Short North. I don't know if it's there now or not, but that was a trendy restaurant in the Short North. Mm-hmm. And this was in the 90s, about 96. I think it was 96. Anyway, so I called this stockbroker friend of mine who has a portfolio of small bank stocks. And Tim had been raised in Upper Arlington, so he knew a lot of people because of the nature of his venue, where he was raised. And I said, Tim, he said, are you kidding? I said, come over and meet me over there. I said, you might know these people. I said, I don't know who they are. So he met me over there, and we went to Rigsby's. And we walked in. We didn't see anybody. And once this man comes up, and he says, are you Mr. McKinley? And I said, yes. He said, well, I'm Gene D'Angelo. And he was president of the WBNS. And he also was president of the Kappa. He was the Wolf's go-to guy. He was the public relation of the Wolves who owned the Dispatch. I learned later. So he took us over to the table, and he said, Dr. Woods is over here, but he said, Dr. Woods is a good friend of mine, and he was all public relations. He promoted Columbus and everything. Well, anyway, we ate lunch. He did most of the talking. Dr. Woods was very quiet spoken. And he said, well, Dr. Woods wants to ask you something. And he said, he wanted to know how I got onto these instruments. And he said, do you think that you would be willing, are you planning to do this in the future? I said, well, it was a heck of a gift for the people I knew. I said, I don't really know, but I said, I'm inclined, maybe the need comes or somebody comes, I would do it again. So he said, what I want to ask you, he said, our baritones are in a terrible condition. He said they're older than the students who are playing them. And he said, we need to replace the baritones. And he said, I would like for you to see, I guess I bought trumpets or something. It was just a pig in the poke with me. And so I said, well, I did play a baritone in our high school band. And he said, well, I would just like for you to buy a baritone if you were going to do this again. In fact, he says, this takes a lot of nerve for me to say this, but he said, I wondered if you'd buy the whole row. I said, well, how many is that? He said, 14. 14 baritones. So Tim, the guy was with me, he kicked me under the table. And so we went to the restroom, and he said, this bank in Georgia, Wachovia, I can't remember what it was, it's been too many years, but anyway, a bank sold out, and he said, William, if you want to do that, he said, you could do that just on this bank sale. And I said, really? So I got to think about, as my mom's all-time, she loved the band. And we've been, when I went to Ohio State, my first year I was in ADAC, you like to put the freshman, And the second year I went to C deck, and I've been there all these years, since 1960. We've been in C deck, row 3. And so, and we're low, we're not high. And so she could see the entrance of the band, and it was divine for her. And she loved the football team, but she loved the band. She liked the band better. She did the football team. Although she got into the whole thing really good. My family was all big sports fans. And so I thought about it. I said, Dr. Woods, I said, I would consider that, but I got a condition for it. He said, well, what's that, William? He called me William now. And I said, we're going to have an opening of a performing arts center. And I said, and we have a special acoustics. We had this fellow retired professor from Yale, and his formula for acoustics, which was his specialty, he implemented and put it into our performing arts theater, and that's why it's so important. You really don't need a microphone in there. In fact, performers sometimes are too loud, and it becomes annoying because it's so loud. It's such sensitive hearing, and we just let him innovate this theory, and it sure has paid off big. That's one of the reasons we can draw. And once we get a performer here, they come back if we want them. So anyway, Dr. Woods, I said, and he didn't know about it. I told him about this Yale professor, but it was just loose talk. So he clandestinely came down here and went down there incognito and went in there and checked it out. And so he said that when we left, he said, we might just do that. I said, well, if you'll bring the band, I'll buy the baritones. So it all came to pass that the grand opening was going to be the Ohio State Band. However, it was not. We had this Susan Warsaw, that was the public relations, you remember the creation of the bear? Okay, her husband graduated with a girl, one of their high school girl was Emily Purdom was her name, and her husband, guess who it was? Doc Severinsen. So they had a reunion in Portsmouth, and so we were just shooting for a big blockbuster, and so she agreed to get Doc to come back, and he became the opening, and we followed it right behind with the Ohio State Marching Band. Wow. And so at that it was 1997, and also a condition was I told Dr. Wood, I said, don't you ever tell anything about this. This has got to be clandestine, because I said they'll be on my doorsteps if anybody found this out. So he came down here, brought the whole band. We had to feed them, 240 of them. And so at the end, and it was great. They go berserk. It's like a big pep rally, Yeah. And so they came from all over the region. So right at the very last of the performance, he says, I've always been known to be a man of my word. And he said, but I'm going to transgress that. He said, I'm going to be a sinner or something tonight. He says, this is too good for you, this audience, not to know. He said, one of the biggest supporters of the Ohio State Marching Band is right here in this audience, and he's from this community. I like to die. I thought, oh my gosh. And he said, William, stand up here. And I went up on the stage, and he brought all those baritones down. They played I Want to Go Back to Ohio State and did all the cute, the pep rally stuff. And so they presented me this plaque, and I got it over there on the wall. He said, I officially declare the baritone row the McKinley row of the marching band. And Dr. Hoke said, who's the director now, Dr. Hoke said, I'm still the only one they ever named a row after. He was just an upcoming with John Waters. They were the rising stars, at that time. So they presented this plaque, and the whole place went berserk. They was cracking up, laughing and everything. And I was so embarrassed. I almost couldn't move my feet. I was so embarrassed. It just shook me up to think he would do that, But I thought, I got to get over this, basically. So then, from then on, Dr. Woods, we've had the band down here 5 times. They were here a year ago in November. I was in the James. I had this cancer taken on my shoulder. So, I'll show you this. You can just sit right there. I'll just get this. You'll like to see this.
Take a picture of that.
Dr. Hook and name John Schwartz brought this over and had a presentation in the James, and they hung it up in my room. Don't you think that didn't improve my service? These are the kids that he could get to sign. I was there in June, and everybody's not in school, but he got all these things, and there's his signature right there.
Wow.
Take a picture of you with it?
Yep, sure. So I told him I wanted him. They haven't been down here for 3 or 4 years. Excuse me, I'm going to have to go to the restroom.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Drank too much coffee.
Okay, so Stephanie, you said I could pause it?
Yeah.
That's the story of the band.
Oh, okay.
Then they had me out on the field. We have an athletic scholarship up there for a lot of years. So this was 2000. This was the national championship year.
Wow.
2002. We played in 2003. We beat Miami. This was the plaque that Dr. Woods gave us.
Oh wow.
Down there to the.
You're the first person to adopt a row.
Yeah, and he says it's the only one.
That's
Dr.
amazing.
Hoke said, I'm well aware of the M row.
That is very cool.
All of these are related to Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
We've promoted Ohio State down the line.
So is there a lot of Ohio State alumni in
Yeah, we
Parsons?
have. We do have a lot of Ohio State. Oh, I forgot the number.
Yeah.
I thought it was 500 at one time.
Yeah, because I think John mentioned that he went to Ohio State as well.
Oh yeah, he did.
Mm-hmm.
We're all Ohio Staters. He was president.
Yeah.
Our alumni. He's raised a lot of money for our scholarship.
Wow.
And this is 2002. Did you see that?
Oh.
You know how they have people? I think we were the first. Andy Geiger
Mm-hmm.
wanted to promote the scholarships or the endowments. And this is what I was told. And so it was his scheme that that the athlete, they're getting their education, but he wanted to tie it to these scholarships. So they gave me Joel Penton, who played the line then, and I had him for 5 years. And so he wanted to teach them that there were people out there working hard, and it was supporting their academic endeavor. So it was a combination of the state plus the private.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I understood it. So that's why, and this was the beginning of the promotion. The State Farm guy was out on the field with me that day, and I forgot who else. But now they just run them. If you ever go to the games, they just have those people run, and they're millions of dollars. They run them out there. That's what they were doing. But they seemed to make more of a deal out of it when I was out there. They had me out there for 3 to 5 minutes at least, taking pictures. They said, Mr. McKinley, you'll wave now. That's where I was waving. You step up to the 20-yard line. They had a prompter there, telling me what to do. Well, there were three of us, and one of them was that State Farm guy. He was older then, and I forgot. It was one of the Big Ten players of the year. I can't think who it was right now. I've just got a mental block. But there was 3 or 4 of us, and we were out there, and he told us to step forward and wave. And they had us up on the screen, you know, all that stuff, just like they do now.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
So I was in the James, and so Dr. Hoke came over, brought the drum head, and I said, "Do you need something?" "Oh, hi, Eddie.
Hello.
You need $2, don't you?"
Huh?
"You need $2?
Well, I thought it's 25.
23.
Oh,
I don't. So where was? Oh, was at the James, and so Dr. Hoke came over, and he said, and they went through this, and I said, "We'd like to have you back." It'd been about 3 or 4 years, and we'd had him down there. I think his was the 5th time it was going to be, and he said, "Well, William," he says, "you know," he said, "Dayton is putting a heavy lobby on us." And I said, you know, he said, "Well, let's think about it." He said, this was in 17, I think. Yeah, 17. And he said, let's think about it. So, you know, I just forgot it. I just thought. So our executive director of performing arts called and he said, this was like in June, and then now we're up to February. Well, I went to the Michigan game. I had gotten out of there and did very well, and I got out of there and went to the Michigan game. And I had John with me, and Grace Martin I nominated her for the Community Spirit Award. Her husband was a physician, and he died of Bryce disease. And so she led the crusade for the dialysis. And they had to take him to Cleveland, but he finally died. So we had a big dialysis campaign going on, and they named it after her husband, but she was the ringleader, and she was a personal friend of mine, so I had Grace. And so, but she won the Community Spirit Award. And with the guy that, Peanuts, what was the, Schultz?
Yeah.
I think he was the one that on the stage with her. I think it was. It was the cartoonist. And then there was Eli Lilly. They had 3 winners. Eli Lilly and this cartoonist and Grace from here. And I didn't think she had a chance. And so we wrote it all up for the hospital. You remember I was kind of on the hospital thing. And the public relation, we wrote all this autobiography of the dialysis. And I put it on my desk and didn't turn it in. It was like March 31. I didn't turn it in, and I kept it a whole year. And went up to March of the next year, and somebody got wind of it, and I still don't know how that was, called and said, "We understand that you have a possible nominee for the Community Spirit Award." I said, "Oh, yeah, but I didn't turn it in because I didn't think she had a chance with all of our famous alumni, whatever." And so he said, Jeff said, "Turn it in." So I had to overnight it, so get there. It was the 31st. I think it was on the 30th, and I overnighted it, and they got it, and they awarded it to her.
Wow.
And I kept that whole thing a whole year. Didn't think she had a chance. You know, it was just like playing the lottery. You know, that's what I felt like. You know, but I just do it for fun. But she was awarded, and then in the '90s they gave me the Community Spirit Award. Forgot the year, or it might have been. It was 97 or 90, 96, 97. I had the Hummer. Oh, wait a minute. No, it wasn't. It was up to 2007 or 2008, I believe it was. And I had they give you the lucite with the gold medallion in it, and we have our carpets cleaned, and the fella didn't lock the door. We'd only use 2 doors, and people were nervous when they come here when they've lost somebody, and they opened the wrong door, which should have been locked, and knocked that thing and went in 1,000 pieces.
No.
But I've often thought maybe I might call them and see if they have the community. They have the award things coming on right. It's in the Ohio State Magazine, promoting it this year. And I thought maybe I might try to have that. I used to keep it out here. It was just on a wood plaque, and it's like an art. And it has a gold, like a Academy Award coin or something. So it went 1,000 pieces. So I've had a lot of history with Ohio State
Yeah.
and Shawnee State too,
Yeah.
and our local schools.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of people have in this area.
So I think that one of the big stories of Scioto County is the philanthropy of this county, which is very little known.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I mean, we're all supposed to be poverty stricken, on dope,
Yeah.
or something. But we've had all this philanthropy going on for a long time. And when I was president of our alumni in the 80s, they wanted to know if I could get some President's Club members, and I had 4 right out of Valley Township here. I sent them, in those days it was only at $10,000, but that was big for them.
I mean, still big.
Yeah, or still big, right?
Yeah,
Well, they talk in terms of millions now, so
true.
with Amazon and everything else going on, all the high tech. But we had 4 right out of here.
Do you foresee that philanthropy changing, or is that just something?
I don't know, really, at my age, there's still, like the hospice thing is still going on. But it could get a little testier we've got a gap in our generations.
Yeah.
It may take down the list. I don't know. There's a big heritage here, but whether people, they get their lives in other communities and things. Although we did have an orthodontist. He wasn't an orthodontist, he was a doctor, and his wife was from here. And he left a fairly sizable estate, and she had brought her half back and put it in our area. See, our area, we have a Scioto Area Foundation here that's worth several million. And people generally, that's one of the vehicles. They'll either do it direct or they'll go to the foundation.
So do you see a lot of, so you talk about the lost generation, right?
Mhm.
Like a lot of the younger people moving out, but are there any moving back to the area that you see?
A lot of times it's retired people,
Okay.
they'll come back home. If they can sustain a living, we have a high percentage moving back. And we have a big retirement community. And a lot of times that's where the philanthropy comes from.
Yeah.
The return of the generation. But when you get children involved in schools and you get your roots into other communities, it's risky. However, the hospice thing, which is such a powerful thing, is we're just about to get to 3 million.
It's amazing. Yeah. Do you think that's good?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I've tried to relate
No,
things to
that's-
Ohio
Oh,
State.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
This has been an amazing.
Yeah, I think-
Yeah.
I think a lot of people underestimate the philanthropy, so I'm really glad
Yeah.
that
Scioto
that-
County is, in my fundraising endeavors, and I'm prejudiced, of course. You have to build that factor in there. But if you go around all these counties, generally speaking, Scioto County will be 10-1 over every other county adjacent to us or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there may be one person show up, but I'm talking about county-wide, more than one person. There's been a big spirit, like the Red Cross,
Uh-huh.
and our counseling center has been, because of our opioid problem here, the state's used this kind of as a pilot for recovery. Governor Kasich was down here several times, and they sent people down here to study the methods. We've had a lot of recovery, and we just had our this week we had a celebrity chef dinner.
Oh yeah. Drew Carter won. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, he was telling us about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So did he have a good time?
Oh yeah.
We have a lot of fundraisers here. We have the Dancing with the Stars. This is going to be the last one. It's kind of burning out a little bit, and so we're bringing back all the winners. It's been 10 years. Bring back all the winners, and it's going to be a something. I don't know what word I want to use, but this is the clash of all the winners, like a Jeopardy brings all these winners
Yeah.
back. And it's going to be a fun thing, but it's softening up some. You know, you can only ride an event, but it has been a scream. You can watch it's all a contribution, and you can watch your candidate. They have makeup artists down there, and your candidates come, and you can watch them do their hair. I mean, it's a scream. People come early. We say 5 o'clock. They're there at 4, just to observe everything. And we've sold out every year. And we had that one year. We raised about 100. I think it was 185. I said 190, but we've been up near 100 all. See, our Red Cross, we had like American Heroes, and we would raise on that breakfast or whatever it was, maybe $10,000. We had one time, we had the fellow that survived the 911 experience. He was blind, and he had his dog, and they thought they were gone. The dog let him out he came here, and we raised $18,000. And so we were having a board meeting, and Mary Arnson, who's now the public relations of the hospital, she was the Red Cross. She said, we got to figure out some scheme to maybe raise more money, and just everybody put their thinking caps on, and we'll just have a free exchange of ideas. Before we left, a close friend of mine, everybody was just kind of laughing, and the meeting was kind of over. And so Rick speaks up and he says, well, the only thing I know is that my wife likes Dancing with the Stars. So the chairman of the board said, boy, that would be a trip. So Mary Arnson, who was the executive director, she Googled it, and she found a Dancing with the Stars. So she brings all the information back. So we did it as a pilot. We didn't know if it could fall apart, and they put it on Facebook, and they started selling tickets, and it just blew everybody's mind. And before it was over, we had raised $40,000.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was never part of a fundraiser that went so backwards. That evening, everything, just putting it all together, is so many loose ends. But we walked, and everybody had a great time. And I said I've never was a part of anything that went so backwards, and everybody just had a blast. They just had a blast. So we did it the next year, and we doubled it, and then of course it went on up. So
That's amazing, just the
yeah,
community spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah, it is. It's been sold out every time. So that was the Red Cross, the celebrity chefs. I chanced off 2 of my football tickets for the. I have 4 seats. We had 8 seats for years. When we've had so many deaths, we turned 4 of them back. But I give the opening game, and I just let them have my parking pass. I park right in front of the stadium, and so I just let them have my tickets and parking pass. And people, we have like $1 ticket or 6 for $5 or arm's length. And almost everybody bought 1 arm's length or 2 arms. We had a pile of tickets. They went crazy. And I took my Brutus Buckeye pillow down there, and it was just euphoric. You know, it was just so much fun. Everybody was looking around for everybody had the longest arm. So they didn't use their arm. If they had a friend that had a longer arm, we used the longer arm. So
Get more tickets. Yeah.
you know, right? We had a pile of tickets. And so from that fundraiser, we have summer camps for the inner city kids. And we got, from the fundraiser, the preliminary is $34,000.
Wow.
And it takes about 30 to 35 to run the summer camps. And they have all these kids down in the projects. And it's just a fantastic thing. And there was a minister, he's retired now, but he was wonderful. And we got 2, a coordinator and a co-coordinator run it, but they seem to be going good. And I don't know how many kids they have. It's a slew of kids, and it keeps them busy for the summer. One's a football coach, and he's athletic, so that plays in the big, keeps them going.
It's amazing, just all the giving back to the community you're doing.
And then the thing about the celebrity chefs was, see, it's Counseling Center sponsored, is we have the people that have the most successful in recovery, they are the waiters. So it's dual. They see that the people are there packed supporting them, but it's very refreshing because you hear of all the failures to look, and these are the recovery kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very refreshing, and it's a dual thing.
Yeah. So the majority of the money is going to the summer camp.
It goes all of it.
All of it. All of it.
100%.
Wow.
So the celebrities, we have a lot of chefs.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much
thank you.
for
So
taking the time out of your day
Yeah.
to come talk to us, because this has been so informative. Yeah, we
Well, it's
appreciate
Ohio.
it.
I've tried to think of the Ohio
Yeah.
State related
Yeah.
things, which since you're Buckeyes, I mean, you
Mhm.
could see how Ohio State has reached down in the Appalachia, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it extends. Like I said, Ohio State
There's-
is just becoming this nation.
You know what? You don't have to be an Ohio Stater to be an avid Buckeye. It's a feeling and a spirit.
Well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
There's a tremendous Ohio State feeling. And I learned that even through the funeral business. I mean, just, it's amazing. People come in here, well, how do you think the Buckeyes are going, your team's going to do this year? You think Ryan Day's going to be good, or don't you hate him to Urban left, and blah, 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 just conversation.
yeah, something quick that connects people
Yeah.
immediately to each other.
Ohio State does that.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was, this is a story, you'll love this is a family story. My mother and my aunt, who was like my grandmother, they used to wear their furs to they dressed me up to go to Ohio State football as a young kid.
Uh-huh.
And people, the dress, speaking of clothing, where we went, they wore their furs and everything else. I mean, you dressed up to go to Ohio State. Now you hardly wear any clothes at all. It's the changing times of the American people. But we went to one of the first games I went to was 1954, and we played Wisconsin, and we were the underdogs, and we won the national champ. We were undefeated in 1954. But the big story at that time was going to be Wisconsin. So we ended up, and we were, I think we were getting beat, and this fellow named Hopalong Cassidy intercepted a pass and went the whole distance, and we ended up winning the game, and the whole stadium exploded. The paper came out on the C deck. It was amazing. They threw paper out on the C deck. So my mom, when Cassidy made the interception, my mom there was just two of us there, and I was probably 13. So, and you just imagine the whole stadium exploded. And so Mother was wiping her eyes, and I thought she got sick. It kind of took the joy out. I said, "What's wrong, Mom?" She said, "Woody's going to make it. Woody's going to make it." She was a big fan. It turned into a big fan of Woody Hayes. Woody's going to make it.
So even like a family history with Ohio State too, kind of just fosters the love for it.
Tom.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.